Hello, you're all very welcome today. My name is Emma Loughney. I'm the Communications Manager with the Fulbright Commission Ireland. Today, we are going to give you an overview of the Irish Scholar Awards. So these are open to professionals and academics to go and conduct research or lecturing in the US. The application period is not open yet, but it will open the end of August this year, and that will be for the 23-24 Irish Scholar Awards. So today, my colleague Sonia McGuinness is going to give you a quick run through of the awards available, and also to touch on the eligibility criteria and a few little details like that. Then we're very lucky to be joined by some of our alumni who are going to join us for a Q&A. They'll tell us a little bit about their own unique Fulbright experiences and why they chose where they chose to go, because in most of the award categories, you will be able to choose a US institution or agency of your choice to partner with, to collaborate with, and to tell us a little bit about their cultural experiences in the US as well. So we will have today joining us Dr. John Graney, who is a Marie Sklodowska Curie Fellow at the Goethe University in Frankfurt. He is the author of The Distance of Irish Modernism, Memory, Narrative, Representation, and co-editor of Irish Modernism's Gaps, Conjectures, Possibilities, both published by Bloomsbury. His work has been published in Textual Practice, Irish Studies Review, and Derrida Today, amongst other venues. As a Fulbright National University of Ireland postdoctoral fellow at the University of Pennsylvania, he completed his 2 books on Irish modernism. Brian Mcguire is an artist who has worked in the area of conflict and human rights for over 40 years. His early projects were with paramilitary groups in Ireland from both sides of the conflict. In more recent years, he has worked in the favelas in Brazil and the colonias in Mexico. His work is held by the museum collections across the globe. And from 2000 to 2010, he was the head of faculty and professor of fine art at NCID. He spent 15 years developing and managing a 3rd level art course in the maximum security prison in Portlaoise. And his Fulbright project to the USA was with the Missoula Art Museum in Montana, where his research focused on the continuing disappearances of young Native American women. Dr. Brenda Mcnally is a postdoctoral research fellow at the Centre for Climate and Society, DCU. As a Fulbright Geological Survey Ireland scholar, Dr. Mcnally visited the Center for Science and Imagination at Arizona State University and the Center for Science and Technology Policy Research at University of Colorado Boulder to learn more about socio-ecological imaginaries and how they can be used to reinvigorate public engagement with climate and energy policy. Since returning, she's continued to her work on climate imaginaries by investigating the production and circulation of ideas around energy transition and new forms of promotion in digital media and popular culture. So here's just a few snaps from our Fulbright alumni over in the US. As I mentioned, all of our alum have gone off to do very different projects. These awards are open to all disciplines, and they've all enjoyed lots of different forms of cultural immersion. Here's a nice pic of Brenda Mcnally, one of our speakers, enjoying some of the heritage sites in the US during her trip. John Graney teaching a class over on his Fulbright Award. And here's a snap of Brian Mcguire actually speaking with his host contact over in Montana before he set off on his Fulbright Award. So we look forward to speaking to our alumni shortly, but for the moment, I will hand over to my colleague, Sonia McGuinness, who is the Scholar Awards Manager, who will be kind of dealing with you, the main point of contact if you do decide to apply for a Fulbright Award. So over to you, Sonia.
Hi, everyone. Great to see so many people on the webinar today. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview of the Scholar Awards for the academic year 23-24. Okay, so Fulbright was set up in Ireland in 1957, and the Irish Commission was set up as a standalone body in 91. And in given this year, 2022, we have over 180 commissions worldwide, bringing exchange students and scholars from the US and sending their students and scholars to the US. Go to the next slide, Emma. So the opportunities we have. So our awards are open to students, scholars, artists, teachers, and professionals. So it's important to stress that our awards aren't just open to academics, they're also open to professionals in all disciplines, including research, study, or teaching or lecturing in the US. So what does the award provide? We give you a monetary grant. We organize your visa, and if you're bringing dependents, we facilitate their visa as well to go to the US. You're given accident and emergency insurance. There's cultural and professional programming before you leave here in Ireland, and also while you're in the US, and a huge amount of support links in the US and Ireland. So what about the experience? It's a lifelong experience, and I suppose in some respects it can be life-changing. Fulbright is recognized as a brand worldwide, and you're part of the Fulbright family once you've been given a Fulbright award. You'll definitely find that. So establishing your eligibility. So just to make sure that you're eligible to apply to the Irish Commission. So the awards are open to Irish and EU citizens, and that would be EU citizens living in Ireland for the last 5 years. You have to demonstrate a strong rationale for going to the US. So why do you need to undertake your research in the US? Why can't you do it in Ireland? So we want to see the justification for that. You must comply with the 2-year home rule visa requirement, which is where after your stay of research in the US, you're required to return to Ireland for 2 years. It doesn't mean you can't travel or holiday or do a small research, like trip to the US or anything like that. It just means that you can't apply for citizenship, okay? So you cannot be a dual Irish US citizen either. So let's go through the, and then also you cannot be a dual, sorry, Emma just moved me on there. Yeah, so you can't be an Irish US citizen, so therefore you can't hold a US passport if you intend to apply to the Irish Commission. You cannot be living in Ireland or in the US at time of applying. And we also look at recent extensive experience of studying or living in the US. That means if you are doing a master's in the US and you've just returned home and now you want to go back and do a PhD, there has to be a justification as well for that. And when reviewing applications, we will look at that extensive experience. You can go to the next slide. So let's just go through the application process briefly. Okay, so the applications will open in August 2022. So you can reach out to us at that time. It's an online application. We send you the link, you register, and we send you the guidelines about how to go through the application. The deadline is October 2022. The applications are then sent out for a technical review between November and December 2022. So each application is sent out to 3 reviewers to score. Then they are shortlisted for interview, and we call the shortlisted candidates for interview in February 2023, and then the offers are made in March 2023. Okay, planning. So it's important that you review the information on our website now. Take a look at what's there, take a look at the different awards that we offer, decide on what you want to do, what area of research you want to look at while you're in the US. Research what it means to be a Fulbrighter. I suppose we're quite unique in the funding sphere, as it's not just about your research, it's about you and about what you can bring to Fulbright. So we don't want to see you just through the prism of your research. We want to see you as an individual and what you can bring to the program, because it's not just an academic exchange, it's a cultural exchange. And this is a really important part of Fulbright. So it's really important that you research this aspect. And then you register your interest on Fulbright.ie. And when the awards are opened in August, we will send you some information. Go to the next slide. So the different categories, we have the Irish Student Award categories for postgrad research and postgraduate degrees, Irish Scholar Awards, which are for academics and professional, either to lecture or research, the Tech Impact Awards, the FOTA Awards, this is for Irish students to go and teach Irish as a language in the US, and then the Fulbright Truman Awards for academic or professional study. Again, these are managed through the Belgian Commission. So the Student Awards, I'll just, for the scholars and, the Irish Scholar Awards. So For scholars or professionals in all academic disciplines, so we have the All Disciplines Awards, which is in lecturing or research. You must possess a PhD or have 5 years relevant professional experience. You must establish an affiliation with the US institution. Now, when we say institution, we mean a cultural institution, we mean an academic institution, we mean a museum. So think outside the box. It just doesn't have to be an academic institution. You could be going to a cultural, a museum, a gallery. You could be going to work with a group of people. So it's very open-ended in that way. And that's why we say it's not just for academics, it's also for professionals or artists, okay? So the duration of the grant is 3 to 12 months, and the max award is €35,000. For scholars or professionals in any discipline using the ICT, which is, you must possess, this is the Tech Impact Awards, you must possess 3 to 5 years of relevant professional experience, a PhD. Preference is given to early career researchers, so PhD conferred since 2020. Non-commercial research exploring transformative power of ICT. It's usually 2 weeks to 3 months max, and the max award is €11,000. So additional financial support. We give out our awards, and then there is an opportunity if you needed an equity step or a step up, that you could look to the Opportunity Fund for additional funding. And we also have a bursary, which is the Mary McBartlett Bursary, in memory of Mary McBartlett, who was a Fulbright alum, singer, producer, and mentor. So that's also given out annually. So, I mean, if you're in the creative sphere and you think about, you might consider also applying to Mary McBartlett Bursary, or if you have an interest in music, and maybe that's something you as a person would be looking to explore while you're in the US, definitely put that in your application as well. So finding a host, I suppose this is probably one of the most difficult parts of the application, because we don't seek out your hosts in the US. That you're the proactive scholar who needs to find a connection with a US institution, or a US institution to see where you'd fit in. So how do you find a host? Well, you seek out experts in your field. So you've probably attended conferences with US academics that you'd like to research with. So definitely think about who you've ever talked with, or do you know other Fulbright alum who've gone to institutions in the US that you're interested in attending, and reach out to them. Talk to your academic colleagues at your institution and see whether they have connections at US institutions, because it's always great to get a connection before you reach out. But the other thing about reaching out to academic institutions or institutions in the US is that Americans are very welcoming of receiving emails from people intending on applying for a Fulbright and looking to collaborate. So it's always worthwhile, sending that email and thinking outside the box, and reaching out to academics that you would like to collaborate with, and tell them that you're applying for a Fulbright as well. You could also look at our US alum that are on our website. They're obviously based in all American institutions, and maybe one of them is based at the institution that you're looking at going to, and they would be happy to talk to you and give you leads to that institution. So just think outside the box and use if you look at our website, you'll see there's a multitude of people that you could connect with who might help you or facilitate you in getting a host affiliation, okay? We welcome diversity as well, and that's why we talked about academic institutions, not just academic institutions, but other institutions that we would welcome you collaborating with and researching with. So whether it be a museum, or like we have an American academic who's based at SFI here, so you could be going to the equivalent of the US or something like that. So think outside the box when it comes to that, and use the existing links we have. And we also welcome diversity in the fact that it's not just the Harvards and Yales of this world. Like, we love to see people going to community colleges and considering researching at a community college. So, think about that. Like, there's over 4,500 academic institutions in the US, if that's your research area, that you can pull from. So it's definitely worth thinking outside the box and looking at options or people that can give you connections in the US. So we have a number of sponsored awards so the Health Research Board, Environmental Protection Agency, Teagasc, Enterprise Ireland. So when you're applying, there's also a sponsored award form, and you have to write a justification of why you should be considered for that award. Okay, so there's the sponsored awards that are for students and scholars. There's the EI, EPA, and the GSI, and then the scholar-only awards is the Health Research Board, the NUI Scholar Award, the Creative Scholar Award for professionals, the Fulbright National Archives and Heritage Science and Fellowships, Tech Impact Award, and the Tech Impact Cybersecurity Award at Boston College. So the application. It's a big application, but it's a big undertaking, but I suppose it's definitely worthwhile for you to kind of, put your thoughts down. So there's personal information in the CV, then there's the Fulbright Statement, which I can only say it's really important to put that Fulbright Statement together. So the Fulbright Statement is more about you and what you can bring to the program, not so much your research, but definitely more about you and what you can bring to the program. And then we're also looking for the project statement. So that's your research statement. So that's what you're planning to do in the US. Then your 3 academic references. Again, they don't have to be academic references, just recommenders. A copy of your passport, samples of your work if you're an artist, these can be sent electronically. And then, if possible, at time of applying, the letter of affiliation from the American host. So, research objectives. What is groundbreaking about your work? What is different about your work? What's the rationale of going to the US as opposed to staying in Ireland to undertake your research? Identify certain areas that you will want to concentrate on. Explain your objectives and expected results. And I suppose it's also important to think like the plan of action when you get off the plane, what you plan to do and how you plan to go through it. So be very methodical about your research plan. And then what impact that research will have when you come back to Ireland for you in your career, but also for Ireland in general. And also when you're in the US, what can you give back? The Fulbright Statement, again, it's talking about you personally. We want to hear about you, both personally and professionally. What are your motivations? What are your interests? What are your ambitions? What else do you plan to do while you're in the US, apart from just your academic, your area of research? What you hope to achieve in the US upon your return, and the benefit of being a Fulbrighter. How is that different from other funding mechanisms? Okay, and I suppose why this is so important is that initially your applications it's a technical review, which is weighted heavily on your research area. But when you come to the interview stage, it's weighted more heavily on the Fulbright aspects of your application. Okay, so the review, that's just as I was saying. So the review is weighted on your academic record and your project statement. And then at interview stage, it's more about your cultural engagement, your leadership, the Fulbright component. So when I talk to people who have been selected to come to interview, I say to them, you're talking to non-experts in your field. So we just need an elevator pitch of your research. What they really want to know is about you and what you are going to do in the US, apart from your research, and what you can bring to the program. And then on your return to Ireland, how you can disseminate that information and how you can still be part of the Fulbright family. So resources. Again, we have Fulbright ambassadors in most Irish institutions, so please reach out to them. There's a load of webinars, alumni videos available on our website, so really utilize those resources, or our YouTube channels, etc. There's Fulbright events, support at your higher educational authority, at your higher educational institution. Again, that would be through the Fulbright ambassadors. You can follow affiliate groups. Like there's loads of different groups within Fulbright, like Fulbright Prism, Fulbright Family, which you could consider connecting with, okay? We also welcome people from underrepresented groups, whether they're underrepresented communities, whether it's the area of research you're looking at, whether it's your home institution here in Ireland, the geographical spread, ethnicities, and ability. So we are inclusive of everybody, and we really love to see, we actually seek out diversity and love to see it in our Fulbrighters as well. So please, if there's something about you that makes you unique, you definitely should put that in your Fulbright statement, because we want to see that. Again, I go back to, we want to know about you as a person. Okay, there's also the Fulbright Truman Awards. Now, these are administered by our colleagues at the Belgium Commission, and the deadline is December 2022. So for more information, you should contact the Belgian Commission, but they're co-funded by the EU, and they're EU-US relations, postdoc research and lecturing, or for students, it's post-research. So they're open to all applicants who are members of the EU. So next steps. Reach out to your recommenders because it can take a certain amount of time, especially because you need 3 to talk to them about your research and what you plan to do in the US, and so that they can give you the best recommendation that you need. Select the institutions that you're wishing to research in the US. Research Fulbright ethos, what it means to be a Fulbrighter and how you can incorporate that into your application. Talk to other Fulbrighters, whether they be Irish Fulbrighters, they'll be so happy to talk to you, or talk to our American alum. There are a multitude of American Fulbrighters here in Ireland at the moment because we had a lot of deferrals due to COVID. So if you look at our website, you can see their areas of research, you can see their American institutions, and you can see the host institutions they are based at here. And if there's anyone you're interested in talking to, just reach out to me with a brief email and I can forward it on to them, and they'd be more than happy to talk to you. So that's another avenue of thinking about how to get host institutions in the US. So I think that's it. That is it.
Okay, thank you very much, Sonia. So now I see actually there are some questions coming in the chat box. So we'll get to those, but first I just would like to maybe bring our alumni panel back in now. And maybe each of you, Brenda, Jean and Brian, might be able to say a few words just about your Fulbright project in the first instance, about what it was you did on your Fulbright project. And then we might have a little Q&A conversation about more details that might be helpful to applicants. So how about John, would you go first and tell us a little bit about your award, your Fulbright Award in the US?
Yes, thank you, Emma. My Fulbright Award in the US was to undertake research on Irish modernism, Irish literary modernism. And I undertook that primarily at the University of Pennsylvania, where I was situated amongst 3 to 4 leading scholars in the field, mentored directly by one of them. I undertook archival research for this project in Atlanta and in Boston. And I also had various meetings around the country with different scholars in my field at that time to kind of generate a kind of more multidisciplinary perspective to the project.
Excellent, thank you very much. And maybe Brenda, if you could just say a few words about yours.
Hi, Emma. So I work in the area of environmental communications, and my field is climate change journalism and communication. And a key challenge in that respect is, how do we get the public on board? How do we solve the challenge of public engagement? And one of the solutions to that was to view the challenge as a crisis of imagination. And this made me very interested in the area of climate imaginaries, which is quite a small and emerging area within the whole field of imaginaries. So I went to America to learn more about imaginaries, sociological imaginaries, as was mentioned in the introduction to myself. But I specifically wanted to tease out ideas about climate and energy imaginaries. And the school I went to were key scholars in that field. They actively work with implementing imaginaries as well as theorizing about it. So I was able to attend various workshops where they were carrying out research on imaginaries. I was able to attend classes where they were delivering lectures and teaching about imaginaries. And essentially, I just really embedded with a bunch of scholars who are just at the cutting edge of creative approaches to engagement, thinking about energy transitions and imaginaries. And it was just a fantastic experience to have that key kind of research and knowledge to talk to scholars with that background.
That's great to hear, Brenda, thank you. And Brian, if you could come in, I did give a brief biography of you at the start, but if you could tell us a little bit about your Fulbright project and what you did.
Okay, thank you. The project was to engage in research into a phenomena which is best summed up by the task force's title, which is Missing and Murdered Indigenous People. The Indigenous people, which this is a point under the cultural observations, is that there must be 10 different names for Indigenous people. Tribal seems to be the most acceptable one. A lot of these names, the name of Indian, it seems to be not used, certainly not used by tribal people, except when they're talking themselves, but not used by white people. So there are all kinds of definitions that have problems attached to them. But essentially, the tribal people in Montana are 7% of the population, and yet there are 42% of the people who are murdered or disappeared. And that really sums up the whole thing. The museum in Missoula, which is in the kind of middle of Montana, but towards the west, invited me to come and make a research project with families on the reservations. There's huge distances involved, which means that the 5-month period was barely adequate. And in the first 4 months, I managed to establish contact with 4 families, which is really low productivity. In the last month, I had another 4, and in 1 week recently, I've continued to do the work. Another 4 have appeared willing to work with me. The idea is to make an exhibition which focuses on the missing and murdered and tells their story, and to present that in major cities as well as in the community colleges on each reservation. That's it.
It's really interesting. Thank you, Brian. I don't know, we can't see your face fully there on the screen.
Sorry.
You're okay, just okay. Thank you very much, so we can see you. That's really interesting to hear. And so actually brings me to my next question. So I wanted to ask all of you how you chose where you wanted to go. So was it the people you wanted to work with? Was it, the department itself? Was it, something you were working with in terms of, archives, or what was the draw to where you wanted to go? And if there were, a few options for you, how did you narrow that down in your final kind of application, or how did that process work for you? So maybe Brenda, if you want to take that one first, that'd be great. Thanks.
Hi, yeah. Yes, there's such a vast array of choice when you think of America. That's probably the hardest thing, is there's so many good research centers, excellent researchers. Narrowing down things can be difficult, but for me, the area that I was interested in, the Center for Science and Imagination, just was an immediate, I had to go there. But I will also say that, so I was with Arizona State University. I also really wanted to go to the desert. That was a double pull. I was definitely going to go there. I also really liked that Arizona State University had a connection and a center in Washington. So I in my application arranged to go to Washington too. And I was also keen to work with a scholar in Boulder in Colorado. So I kind of had a 3-part Fulbright planned that all worked around the research I was going to do. So I sort of had my cake and ate it. But the main thing was the center was ideal for me, and it was in the desert, and I wanted to go there.
Excellent. Thank you. And actually, Sonia, you might just comment there. Like it is possible to choose obviously more than one institution, host institution, but we'd usually recommend keeping it to 3 or under, wouldn't we, in terms of for your visa and things like that?
Yeah, so you can have more than one institution, but I suppose, yeah, I'd keep it under 2 or 3 because you need you need a letter of affiliation from each institution, and your visa transfers to each institution as you go along. So if like you're with one institution and you plan to go somewhere for a week, just you'd stay put with the one institution, but it depends. If you're moving month by month to additional institutions, yeah, I'd have to manage that and seek out additional letters of affiliation, but we could work around it. So, but yeah, that's true.
Okay, right. Okay, thanks. And how about you, John? Was it a simple enough choice?
I would agree with what Brenda started out with. You're spoiled for choice when it comes to America. So that presents its own problem because you have to be strategic then afterwards about how you're going to get the award through the initial application. So what's going to stand out to your reviewers is the accuracy of the fit. So that the name that you choose to go with, or the people you're going to associate yourself with as your direct mentors, they would want to be standing out above the others as the most primary and apposite in the field for you to go and develop your research project. So there's that dual aspect to it. Finding somewhere where it's going to be excellent for you, but finding the place which is going to ping absolutely with the reviewers on the application form. And this, I think, brings up the question of where we want to go when we think of America. Most of us will either want to go to kind of New York or California. And you might see this coming through sometimes in terms of the applications, and you're wondering, well, why didn't they go elsewhere with this other person in a different part of the country? I went to Philadelphia for that reason. So that is to say that your absolute perfect kind of research fit is not always going to be in the kind of hot cultural spots, if you want to call it that, though I had a wonderful time in Philadelphia. So I would keep that in mind to make sure that your research fit is particular to people and places in specific institutions rather than, where we might want to go on holidays.
Yeah, exactly. Because you can always do visits.
You can always do visits.
You can visit around the place. And
There's
loads
Labor
of
Day weekend.
Fulbrighters do that. Many have set themselves, a state challenge, how many states can I visit while I'm there or something like that. And I think somebody actually just asked you a question, the chat box there, Sonia, about visiting for shorter stays and things like that. And actually a few questions just coming up in the chat box about letter of affiliation. So maybe Sonia, at this point, you could say a little bit more about that. It's not technically needed by time of application, is it? But it's a positive, isn't it?
It is a positive if you have the letter of affiliation at time of application. So it's a letter from a host institution in the US saying that they're in a position to host you, as in to give you office space, computer space, access to the library. Again, if you're at a academic institution, it can be different if you're in a museum or an NGO or something. But it's about them being able to host you for a certain period of time at their institution, and it has to be more at time of application. That's what it can be. It can be like, we want to collaborate with this individual, our research is matched, they're going to add to our team, etc., etc. And then if you're awarded a Fulbright, it needs to be more about, these are the dates that the individual is going to be at our institution, etc. So it's broad in its outlook, but it isn't a necessity at time of application. But I suppose it can be a positive to your application. But sometimes it can be difficult to, you'll be looking at a few institutions and seeking out letters. And as long as you explain that in your application, that's important as well. So, yeah. Someone else is asking, about going for shorter periods of time. A Fulbright award is the minimum time period you can go for. The general awards or the sponsored awards is 3 months, apart from the Tech Impact Awards, which are shorter periods of time. But it's a continuous period of time, because the idea is you immerse yourself in the US, you're not coming and going. So that whole cultural element can't happen if you're moving back and forward. So that's why it has to be a continuous time. And for visas as well, it has to be.
Okay, thank you. And for the letter of affiliation as well, I've heard from alum that often it can, seeking that out as early as possible, sometimes it helps your proposal evolve, because you're speaking to your potential collaborators and they're telling you what they need from their side.
Yeah.
Whether I've heard of people who plan to do research and then they've been invited to give some lectures and things like that. So it can be beneficial in that way for you planning your proposal, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really important.
Yeah. And Brian, how about you? Was it always going to be Missoula for you, or had you considered other places as well?
No, the accuracy of the fit, I think as John mentioned it, is a very, very useful phrase, because the fit was very good. This is a museum that had a commitment to Indigenous artists over a long period of time. So it was involved in the territory that I was interested in. They approached me about doing this work. However, it wouldn't have been possible to fund it without the support of Fulbright. It would have been impossible because of the length of time it took. There's a huge gap between Native American reservations and society at large. It's an invisible gap, but it's very solid. Reaching that, even though the museum has been working at it for 20 years and is more effective than anybody else, any of the other museums in Missoula or in Montana. So it's still very difficult. There's a kind of a level of bureaucracy. I remember spending one afternoon filling out a huge form after I arrived, which I had a deadline on, but actually it was very easy. It was just the idea of it frightened me. And indeed, in my case, I managed to, my wife joined me for the last month, and it was possible, even though, again, it was a bureaucratic ladder that we had to climb. And I don't know if I have anything further to add.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. I suppose as well that brings us on to like living in the USA. Your cultural observations there. Sometimes we presume that things will be very similar in the USA. From our knowledge, in Ireland of the US, but often, awardees are surprised when they go over how different things are state by state. Were there any surprises for you guys, or, what kind of hit home the most? What did you enjoy most? I know, Brenda, you got opportunity to do lots of trekking, and like there's just endless options, I suppose, in engaging culturally. So what were your highlights?
You want me to start?
Sure.
Yeah, sure. I was just determined to make the absolute most of the Fulbright. I think over the course of the introductions that you gave to us to the Fulbright Award when we had got the awards, those 2 days. The one thing I took away from that information session that you had for us was to say yes to everything and grab your Fulbright with both hands. So I mean, I absolutely took that on board, and everything that I was invited to, I went, and I tried to do things that I might not normally do here, and so just going to Antelope Canyon, which was where that picture was that you have of me. That's an incredible formations in the earth, and that was also in the Native American territories, and I would never have thought I would have gone there, and I just took every opportunity to travel, to listen to what colleagues said about places to go that I might enjoy. And I suppose one of the cultural highlights for me in Phoenix, strangely enough, is it's a real car city, but I got myself a bike, and they have fantastic bicycle lanes there, and cycled everywhere, which I think gave the population a great entertainment to see this lone woman cycling around when people hardly even walk on the pavements. But yeah, just just go with it, I would say, and it definitely is a culture shock. One of the highlights, I will just briefly say this, was also attending the seminars that they have in the Fulbright. So your American Fulbright Association arranges these cultural seminars. I'm not sure if I've exactly got the right terminology there, but I went on one of those, and it was to Kansas, which you might not ordinarily think would be your first stop in America. But it was just a fantastic experience, and I definitely encourage you to consider that. I got to know Fulbrighters from across the globe internationally. We had about 3 or 4 days together in Kansas. We're introduced to colleges in Kansas. We had a lot of seminars, a lot of meetings. We had some fantastic dinners, and it was just all round. There's just so much to do. It really, just a great experience culturally.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, there are so many chapters, like Fulbright chapters around the States, so many kind of Fulbright communities on different campuses around the country. And everywhere you go, really, like, it's so well recognized in the US. And I'm glad to hear that, it does open doors to people and does, it's a good way to socialize and to meet people, to network. How about you, John?
Yeah, the major cultural observation that I had was that there was no housing crisis going on the East Coast. So when you show up, I had no experience of trying to rent in America previously, and America is probably too big a term there. As Emma said, state by state, things are quite different, but there's loads of rental protection and there's loads of negotiating possibilities. So finding a place to live is very easy, and I met up with a few of the other Fulbrighters during my time there, and they all reported back similarly. A lot of the anticipatory worry that you might have in that regard would be nowhere near as necessary as if you were showing up in Dublin today, for example. And then cultural differences. One of the great cultural differences, if you're an academic going to American institutions, is that they have loads of cash hanging around that you can play around with if you're adventurous and imaginative enough. If you want to send a few emails, I did that when I was there. I just wanted to see what the whole American institution was like. You hear about the deep pockets and all these kinds of things of the American institutions, and so I was able to pull $2,000 out of them when I was there after not really trying very hard, and I was able to organize a conference with that money, and I didn't have to bring any of my own money to the equation either. So that was one of the main cultural differences in terms of how the institutions are run. You can probe around, see what you might like to do, see what the possibilities are and how responsive they'll be. And if they're positive at your institution, they will be able to support you financially in terms of bringing people in and supporting your events. So that was a huge thing that turned out to be very beneficial for me in my time there in terms of creating a community for myself as well.
That's really positive. It's great to hear. And how about you, Brian? In terms of cultural kind of observations and just living there, the differences?
Well, the process that I was operating on required me to meet with families whose children had been murdered or disappeared. And so first of all, there were gatekeepers before you get to the family. And one of the gatekeepers told me to turn up for a Sundance. I don't know if you saw the film Man Called Horse. I mean, I saw it when I was very young. No. Anyway, that's based around the Sundance. It's the only kind of image of it that I've ever seen. It's a 4-day religious dance, both men and women, and they dance within a lodge for 4 days. That was extraordinary. However, something happened. I came in. I'm fairly old, and I can't stand for very long. And someone noticed and gave me a seat. And later, I tipped the man on the shoulder who had a seat and said, to thank him. And turned out his son is married in Galway. So, from the Sundance Lodge to Galway.
It's always a connection.
So I also, very importantly, when I arrived there, I discovered that my name is Mcguire, as you know. I probably at the beginning of in the middle of 1600s, the Mcguires were removed from any decent land in Fermanagh by a group of Scottish soldiers. Their sons removed the Blackfeet, who I was working with, from the east to the west. And henceforth, I was known as the indigenous Irishman.
Wow. And did you know that before you went? You just found out when you were there? It's amazing.
Yeah, I was kind of half apologizing for being white, and they told me this story. That's in relation to the Native Americans who were the Blackfeet and the Salish, Kootenai and Crow, the people I met. As regards the museum, they helped me get a studio. They didn't have deep pockets. In fact, they had no pockets at all. They had one grant that they had achieved, which went towards my hotel, and that was it. But they were extremely helpful with contacts. Friends organized the sale of a car and insurance. I had one letter written which said, Brian can drive my car, and his name. And that worked because I was done for speeding, and I produced the letter of insurance, and that was okay. In other words, it depends on where you are. This was country. This was the country, and like every part of the country, laws are interpreted less hysterically than in the cities.
And Brian, as an artist completing a Fulbright application, how did you find, the research project section of it? Because I know there might be other artists tuning in today or watching this back. Did you find it easy to navigate, or were there some challenges for you?
No, it was a very easy document to write. It was very simple because, like, research is actually studio work. Once you got that, like, it's easy. The curator helped. He wrote the letters and stuff, and no, I didn't find any difficulty. There again, I had worked in a university setting for 10 years, so I was familiar with the terminology.
Yes.
But basically, your research is your work.
Yes,
Exactly. What you make in the studio, and if you can keep that, the document is easy.
Okay. Thank you. And how about John and Brenda? Would you have any tips in terms of writing the application? Whether that's the project statement or that Fulbright statement. I know some people do have difficulty with the Fulbright statement because it's more about you as a person and where you start with that. John, maybe do you want to?
Yeah, I'll go first there. On the project itself, I would say work by the strategy that less is more. So you don't want to overpack your research project for the year with too many research outputs in the shape of articles and book chapters and monographs and that kind of stuff. I suggested that I would complete only 2 chapters of my book during the whole Fulbright period, but of course, an academic career being what it is, I had to use the time to finish the whole book anyway. But anyway, for the application itself, less is more. And then for the Fulbright statement, I think you need to really communicate the Fulbright core values of leadership, collegiality, these kinds of things. I can't remember all the terms off the top of my head now. What are they again, Emma? Leadership, collegiality.
Well, I suppose, like I'm a big part of ambassador for Ireland.
Ambassador, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. everybody has their own language and that gets translated after a couple of years. But in the Fulbright statement, anyway, I would suggest that you want to show these things in terms of your past, present, and future. So past examples of how you've already been doing that in your own kind of work and outside your work, how you're doing it currently, and how you'll be able to do that as part of the Fulbright alumni community afterwards when you return to Ireland to communicate those values across the wider artistic and academic spectrum.
Excellent. Yeah, and there is a very rich alumni community in Ireland. There's the Irish Fulbright Alumni Association that has events throughout the year, but there's also the Fulbright Association then in the States that you can stay in touch with as well. And how about you, Brenda, in terms of any tips for people who are thinking about preparing an application this year?
Yeah, I mean, it can't be stated enough, and John just stated it there, but I'll put it as sort of a slightly different way. You know, they're two separate documents, so don't try to replicate what you do in your research proposal in your personal statement, just to really try and clarify that. So whatever you put in the proposal, don't try and repeat it in the personal statement. And I know that Sonia mentioned that too, but that would be key. To maybe even think about it in terms of writing a narrative, which I know can scare people, but it's personal. So your story and how your story connects with your trip to America, which is related to a project, but has wider remit of how you're going to network with people, you know, even thinking about your plans for that. You know, have you, even when you're trying to prepare your project, no harm to start thinking, well, you know, what groups or organizations are there that I might connect with? Because even if that doesn't go into the letter, you've already started preparing for what you're going to do when you arrive. And that's really important in terms of focusing yourself culturally as well as academically. And I certainly try to think about that when writing my personal statement, the kind of cultural networks that I could establish beyond academia and the things that I wanted to do in that regard. So really just trying to think in terms of story for the personal letter. And another thing that I might add in terms of the proposal is it definitely has to have an academic element, but also do realize that you need to make it something that someone who maybe not an expert in your area can understand too. So you have to do quite a challenging things of making it understandable to someone else who isn't an expert, but also have some high level of academic references, and in terms of the research project you're going to focus on has some sort of urgency and social impact, I would say, as well, or that you can see the impact of it and make that relevant to other people. But they're just two separate things, a personal piece about you, why you want to go, what you'll get out of it, what you'll give to it, and then that strong academic piece that I think John articulated really well.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose for any professionals or artists that are tuning in as well, you know, in terms of that academic piece, you know, the same things that Brenda was talking about in terms of, you know, why it's relevant, why your professional work is relevant, why the rationale for going to the States, who you're going to work with and what you're going to bring back to your field, you know, your state, it's the same thing essentially, do you know what I mean? Even if you're not in academia currently. So we're nearly running out of time now already, but so I did want to ask one more question to our alumni. But first, Sonia, I know you've been busily trying to reply to all the questions in the chat box as we go. A lot of them just about eligibility and specific award types and information. Is there anything in there that you think is important to just maybe share with the whole group, or were they very specific questions?
I'm going through them now. I suppose one thing that's come up, and it's something that it's unfortunate because, you know, the UK have left the EU. So UK citizens living in the Republic of Ireland aren't now eligible to apply. You have to hold an Irish passport or be an EU citizen. So I know it's very disappointing, but we have to follow the guidelines, which are it's EU citizens
but you can, of course, apply to the UK Commission.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of their processes would be quite similar, wouldn't they, Sonia? You know, in terms of preparation of essays and things like that.
I even think timing is quite similar. And also just from an academic who's not just like someone asking, I'm of a certain age, like it doesn't matter what age you are. It's got nothing, you know what I mean? That's got nothing. It's all about you as a person and your research. So don't even, that shouldn't be in a consideration or something you know, it doesn't matter to us at all. So, you know, and actually I just had also a question for Brian, like, especially because he came from an arts background and with his, and, you know, sometimes artists might struggle or might find it more difficult to deal with their application because I suppose sometimes it's more geared towards academics or they feel they have to have a syllabus or they have to do this. So Brian, how did you find the application and also the interview process? Obviously really positive because we want all the artists applying, Brian.
Well, the interview was the most intriguing thing. And first of all, I came in and there was nobody opposite me that had a competence in my field. And that was, well, you know, and the second thing is when they may have noted it to me that they were interested in who I was, not in what I was going to do. And of course, I wouldn't believe that. So I tried to deal with what I was going to do, but seemingly who I was came across. And that's what that interview was about who you actually are, that they wanted to know that. And I thought I had done a terrible interview and that they had the opposite view. So you know, I'm emphasizing that interview was an extraordinary thing. We were so that I went in with such a different view of what was required of me, but somehow or other it managed to work out. The one other thing I wanted to say was that the museum thought that they could have me arrive and they would have 20 interviews with families ready. They had none. They had met a blank door. So we had to set out a closed door. We had to knock that door down slowly over a length of period. But it was doable, you know.
But I'd say, Brian, that's as well that cultural element that sometimes it's the same with American scholars coming to Ireland or Irish scholars going to US. The expectation is, I'm going to get it all done, or, you know, this is the plan. But the plan sometimes changes, and that's okay. Like, that's okay for us, and that's okay for you as a researcher to say, actually, it's not going to work this way. I'm going to have to, you know, find another avenue and find my way around it. And like, sometimes that's a worry with academics on either side coming, or researchers on either side coming to the US are going, but they panic because it's not working out the way they thought it was going to work out. And we're like, don't worry, that's part of the process. That's part of the exchange and part of growing in some ways about dealing with these issues and finding your way around them. And that's the cultural exchange element that we seek. We seek you to have. So I mean, yeah, that's okay. You know, you still got there and you still did a lot. So the show will that take place. The first iteration is this September, and the second one is the following September. So it's happening. Exactly.
Well, we only have a few minutes left now, but I just did want to quickly go through with each one of you, just maybe a quick highlight of the impacts so far. So like any impacts that the award has had on you personally, professionally, socially, if you can just give us a quick roundup to leave people with, if they're not inspired enough already, but if I can see from the chat box that people are, and they're really enjoying hearing about all your experiences. So thanks so much for those. But maybe Brenda, if you just want to talk a little bit about the impacts so far.
Well, the one I would concentrate on is it has the academic impact has been huge. The ability to talk to people who are at the cutting edge of imaginaries, to develop my ideas, to begin to develop my ideas about climate and energy imaginaries, have really just transformed my research agenda. I mean, I went away being one kind of a researcher, and I've come back, and now that that knowledge, those people, those colleagues that I'm still in touch with, informs all the grant writing I'm doing, informs all the papers I'm writing, and it's a really cutting area of research. And it's just really, just really motivates me more and more every day in my work. So the impact is personal and academic, and I hope as a result of that, societal, but time will tell.
Absolutely, thank you. That's great to hear. And how about you, John?
Yeah, I think my Fulbright experience had an enormous impact. I was able to work with my mentors when I was there on my future applications. I'm based in Frankfurt now for a Marie Curie Fellowship, and my Fulbright experience is about to repeat itself here in a month's time. My mentor from the University of Pennsylvania is coming over to give a keynote at a conference I'm organizing in May, as well as one other colleague from the University of Georgia. So yeah, without that would never have happened in the future. So it's an ongoing impact, certainly in my life.
Excellent. Oh, it's so good to hear about the ongoing collaborations now, and hopefully they'll be, for all through your career, and wherever your new home institution is, you bring them with you as well.
Yeah, I actually have my PhD supervisor, my Fulbright supervisor, and my current supervisor all giving keynotes at this conference. So it's
Amazing.
Ireland, America, and now Germany.
Brilliant. It's great to hear. And how about you, Brian, in terms of impact so far?
Well, the first thing is that it would be impossible to do this work without the support of Fulbright. Fulbright buys me time in America, and we wouldn't even have been allowed to go there without the Fulbright. If you remember, that we were the only people allowed into America at the time, bar ambassadors. For me, it was last May to September. The impact is yet to be seen. Well, there's kind of local impacts of the work, and I know that I have the support of those families for whom pictures were given. We painted portraits of the loved ones for the families. The impact, it's been shown in Chicago in September, and it'll be reviewed then, and that will be the objective impact. Later, I hope to show it in New York as well. And that's kind of the trade for the visual arts anyway. It'll be the response will be given then. Later, in September the following year, the museum will host the show and then send it through the community colleges in Missoula, and that'll be the Native American impact. So there are different times. I'll be able to answer that question much better in a couple of years. Thank you.
Well, it sounds like there's lots in the pipeline, and bringing awareness to something really important. So that's really important.
There are task forces at federal and state level. However, there have been task forces since they started to take Indian land 300 years ago. They have had federal task forces to fix the problems. They never fix them. So,
yeah, there actually was just one. Apologies there. There's just one question specifically for you, Brian. There, will your work be shown in Ireland? Is there anything?
I don't know. I don't know
yet.
It's not at the moment.
You can watch this space.
I mean, it's here, it's behind me, but it's been shipped out. It's the environment from which it comes.
Yeah. Hopefully one day. Okay, well, we better wrap up. Thank you so much to our alum speakers for joining us today. I know from the chat box that everyone's enjoyed your stories so much. I really appreciate you giving your time. And Sonia and I just love hearing more about your awards, because we chat to you through the process and everything, but coming back a year, a few months, a year or two later, and just hearing about the impacts is really special. Thanks to Sonia for presenting, giving an overview. She's gotten to as many questions as she can in the chat box, but if you haven't had an answer to your question, you can send an email to awards@fulbright.ie. And then our website is fulbright.ie, and lots of information there. and the awards will be open in August, end of August. And by signing up to this webinar, you've joined our mailing list, which you can unsubscribe to at any time, but we will send you updates between now and the awards launch on further steps. But thank you to all of you for using your lunchtime to join us. And we hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Thanks again to Brenda, John, Brian, and Sonia. Hope everyone has a lovely day. See you now. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Emma.